Welcome to our channel, where we bring you the most spine-chilling tales and unsettling true stories. Today, we have a true story haunted tracks. Sit back, but not too comfortably, as we dive into this unnerving narrative. The sun dips below the horizon as Detective Mark Hayes steps off the train, his ears still ringing from the mechanical hum of the rails. He takes a deep breath of the crisp, autumn air and looks around at the small town station, its old-fashioned ticket booth and waiting room bathed in warm yellow light. Beside him, journalist Sarah shivers slightly, her hands stuffed into her coat pockets. They've been assigned to investigate a series of mysterious disappearances on this very train, a route that runs through a remote and desolate part of the country. So, what do we know so far? Mark asks, glancing at the file in Sarah's hand. The disappearances have all happened on the same train, during the overnight journey. Passengers report seeing a ghostly figure of a conductor before they vanish. There's no sign of foul play, and the train seems to be operating normally otherwise. Mark nods, thinking, let's start by talking to the conductor. Maybe he can shed some light on this. They approach the conductor, a seasoned veteran with a weathered face and a kindly smile. Evening, sir. My name's Detective Hayes, and this is my colleague, Sarah. We're here to ask you about the disappearances on your train. The conductor's expression turns serious. I've been with the company for over 20 years, and I've never seen anything like it. We've checked the train from top to bottom, but there's no sign of anything unusual. Mark shows him a photograph of the alleged ghostly conductor. Have you seen this man? The conductor takes the photo and studies it closely. No, I haven't. But then again, I've been working the day shift for the past few weeks. Maybe he's been seen by someone else. As they continue their investigation, Mark and Sarah learn more about the train's history. Built in the early 1940s, it was originally used to transport prisoners of war during World War II. It was nicknamed the Forgotten Train because it traveled through desolate and uninhabited territories, often without a destination. Many of the prisoners were never accounted for, and it was rumored that they were simply left to die in the harsh conditions. One night, while searching through the train's archives, Sarah finds an old map, marked with strange symbols and handwritten notes. She shows it to Mark, who immediately recognizes its significance. This could be it, he says. It looks like the train used to make stops at these abandoned campsites during the war. They decide to investigate the campsites first, hoping to find some clue as to what might be happening on the train. They rent a car and drive for hours through the darkness, eventually reaching the first campsite marked on the map. The area is overgrown with weeds and shrubs, and the only sign of human habitation is an old, rusted iron bed frame protruding from the earth. As they explore further, they discover an old tunnel leading deeper into the earth. Cautiously, they venture inside, their flashlights illuminating the damp, musty walls. The air grows colder and damper as they descend, and they can feel the weight of history pressing down upon them. Suddenly, they hear a faint whispering coming from ahead. They emerge into a large, cavernous chamber, lit by flickering candles. In the center of the room is a wooden altar, covered with strange artifacts and ritual objects. Around the perimeter, rows of ancient bookshelves stretch into the darkness. Standing before the altar is a figure clad in robes, its face hidden beneath a hood. The figure turns to face them, revealing a gaunt, pale face and glowing red eyes. You must be Detective Hayes and Sarah, it says in a chilling whisper. We've been expecting you. As Detective Mark Hayes and journalist Sarah continued their investigation into the mysterious disappearances on the train, they began to dig deeper into the train's dark past. The locals shared stories of its use as a transport vehicle during World War II, carrying prisoners to unknown destinations. One of the survivors, an elderly woman named Edith, recounted a particularly chilling tale about the train's original conductor. She told them that the conductor, a man named Thomas, had gone mad one day while working on the train. He had become obsessed with the idea that the prisoners were somehow responsible for his misfortunes. In a fit of rage, he had deliberately derailed the train, causing it to careen off the tracks and crash into a nearby river. Thousands of prisoners were killed in the accident, and Thomas was never seen again. This story piqued the interest of both Mark and Sarah, as it seemed to fit the pattern of the disappearances. They began to wonder if the ghostly conductor they had seen was, in fact, the spirit of Thomas himself. As they delved further into the archives, they discovered an old newspaper clipping about the accident. which described Thomas as being haunted by the ghosts of the prisoners he had killed. Their investigation led them to the train's maintenance yard, where they found a dusty old locker containing a conductor's uniform and a worn leather conductor's hat. Upon closer inspection, they noticed that the initials TA were engraved inside the hatband. This seemed to confirm their suspicions that the ghostly conductor was indeed Thomas, the train's original conductor. As they continued their investigation, they began to experience strange phenomena aboard the train. Lights would flicker on and off without warning, doors would slam shut for no apparent reason, and they would catch glimpses of a shadowy figure darting through the hallways. The passengers, too, were becoming increasingly unsettled by these occurrences, and many of them began to express a sense of foreboding about the safety of the train. One of the passengers, an amateur historian named Martin, approached Mark and Sarah with a startling revelation. He had discovered that the frequency of sightings of the ghostly conductor had increased dramatically in recent weeks, and that several people had reported seeing him just before their loved ones disappeared. This information sent a chill down their spines. The duo knew that they were getting closer to the truth, but they also knew that time was running out. They had to find a way to stop the ghostly conductor before he claimed any more innocent lives. As they sat in their cramped compartment, debating their next move, the train rounded a bend in the track and came to a halt in front of a deserted platform. The ghostly conductor stood at the end of the car, his features obscured by the shadows, beckoning them forward. Mark and Sarah exchanged a knowing glance before steeling themselves for what lay ahead. With a deep breath, they stepped off the train and onto the platform, their hearts pounding in their chests as they prepared to confront the spirit of the past once and for all. The air was thick with an eerie silence, and they could feel the weight of history pressing down upon them. As they drew closer to the ghostly conductor, they could make out his features more clearly. His face was twisted in a mask of anguish and guilt, and his eyes burned with a fierce determination. He seemed to be waiting for them, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Mark and Sarah exchanged a final glance, nodding silently in agreement. They knew what they had to do. With one final step forward, they confronted the ghostly conductor, determined to put an end to the cycle of death and despair that he had unleashed upon the world. As they faced him, the ghostly conductor's form began to waver and dissipate, his anguished cries echoing through the station until they were finally silenced. For a moment, the air was still, and then, like a whisper carried on the wind, the sound of a train whistle faded into the distance. As they turned away from the platform, Mark and Sarah knew that they had done what they could. They had faced the ghostly conductor and challenged his malevolent intentions, and in doing so, they had given the passengers of the train a chance at a new beginning. The past, they knew, could not be undone, but perhaps it could be put to rest. Together, they stepped back onto the train, their hearts lighter and their spirits renewed, prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The train pulled away from the platform, carrying them back into the world, leaving the haunted station and the ghostly conductor behind them, fading into the mists of time. Detective Mark Hayes and journalist Sarah stepped off the train, their hearts heavy with the weight of the knowledge they had uncovered. They took a deep breath, feeling the crisp autumn air fill their lungs as they stood on the deserted platform. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden light over the surrounding countryside. They turned to face each other, knowing that the time had come to confront the ghostly conductor and put an end to the hauntings. As they made their way back to the train, they could feel a sense of anticipation and unease in the air. The crew, who had been briefed on their findings, waited for them with bated breath. Mark and Sarah exchanged glances, steeling themselves for what was to come. They led the group to the storage car, where they had gathered the artifacts from the train's tragic past. The air inside the car was thick with the musty odor of dust and old leather. Dim light flickered from a lone lantern, casting eerie shadows across the collection of rusty handcuffs, tarnished keys, and crumbling photographs. Mark and Sarah carefully set the artifacts out in a circle, forming a makeshift altar. The crew watched in silence as they worked, unsure of what was to come. Once everything was in place, Mark addressed the group. "We need to perform a ritual," he said, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped him. "A ritual to release the souls of the lost prisoners and finally put an end to this haunting." The crew exchanged nervous glances, but none of them objected. They had seen and experienced too much to doubt the detective's words. Sarah took a step forward, holding a battered leather-bound book in her hands. "This book," she explained, "was found in one of the train's old cabins. It belonged to the conductor who went mad all those years ago." She opened the book to a page marked by a ribbon and began to read aloud. "Oh, spirits of the forgotten, trapped in eternal torment, your cries for freedom now are heard, your bonds are rent asunder." As she spoke, a chill ran down the spines of everyone in the room. The air seemed to thicken, growing heavier with each word. When she finished, there was a moment of stillness, as if the world held its breath. And then, a soft murmur filled the car. The murmur grew louder, becoming a faint chant. "Please," Mark pleaded, "help us set you free." Tears streamed down his face as he felt the weight of the prisoners' souls bearing down on his shoulders. "We're here to help you find peace." The chanting grew louder, and suddenly, a brilliant light filled the car. Mark and Sarah squinted, their eyes struggling to adjust to the sudden brightness. When their vision cleared, they saw the ghostly conductor standing before them. His features were drawn and weary, his eyes filled with sadness and regret. But there was no malice in his expression. "You've done well," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I am truly grateful for what you have done." He gestured around him, taking in the artifacts and the makeshift altar. "Your efforts have given me the strength to move on. I can finally find peace." With that, the ghostly conductor faded from view. The light dimmed, and the air grew still once more. The crew exchanged hesitant glances, unsure if what they had just experienced was real. But as they stepped back from the altar, they knew that something had changed. The train no longer felt haunted. The disappearances had stopped. Mark and Sarah shared a look, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that they had helped set a troubled soul free. They knew that there would always be mysteries in the world, and that not every question would have a satisfying answer. But for now, they could rest easy, knowing that they had made a difference. As they stepped off the train for the final time, they felt a sense of closure wash over them. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and red. They turned to each other, exchanging a small smile. "I guess that's one mystery solved," Mark said with a sigh. "Let's go home." Hand in hand, they walked into the twilight, their future uncertain, but their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that they had left a piece of their past behind them. The haunted train would continue its journey, but now it was free of its spectral conductor. And Mark and Sarah knew that, wherever their paths led them, they would always have each other. The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon as Detective Mark Hayes and journalist Sarah stepped out of their respective homes. They had been partners for several months now, and their recent collaboration on the haunted train case had only strengthened their bond. As they walked side by side, Mark couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment and excitement. The mystery they had uncovered would go down in history as one of the most intriguing cases of their careers. Their phones buzzed with notifications almost immediately as their story went live. The headlines were sensational, with words like haunting, chilling, and mysterious disappearance. The article detailed their investigation into the train's history, the survivors' testimonies, and the ritual they performed to release the trapped souls. It also included their eventual confrontation with the ghostly conductor, whom they had come to understand was not malicious but rather seeking peace. Their editor, a seasoned veteran in the field, called them into her office. She congratulated them on their work, saying that their story had not only solved the mystery but also shed light on a dark chapter in history. She told them that their work was a testament to their skills and dedication, and that she had no doubt they would continue to uncover more stories that needed to be told. With their work finally done, Mark and Sarah decided to celebrate. They went to their favorite diner, where they ordered their usual breakfasts and shared a bottle of wine. As they ate and drank, they couldn't help but reflect on the events that had transpired. They had been through a lot together, and their bond had only grown stronger. As they left the diner, they exchanged knowing glances. They both knew that their partnership was something special, and they were eager to see what other mysteries and untold stories awaited them in the future. The world was a big place, and there were countless stories waiting to be told. Together, they would find them. Detective Mark Hayes and journalist Sarah were on their way to their next case, a supposedly haunted mansion deep in the countryside. The mansion belonged to the wealthy and influential McAllister family, who had recently contacted them about strange occurrences within their ancestral home. As they drove up the long winding driveway, they could feel a sense of foreboding settling over them. Upon arriving at the mansion, they were greeted by the butler, Mr. Jenkins, who was visibly shaken. He led them into the drawing room where the McAllister family was waiting, anxious to share their story with them. The mansion itself was a grand affair, with high ceilings, ornate furnishings, and a lingering aura of decay. The family told them that they had been experiencing strange happenings for several months now, starting with inexplicable noises and progressing to full-blown apparitions. The children were terrified, and the servants were growing increasingly restless. Mark and Sarah exchanged glances, both sensing that this case would be unlike any they had worked on before. They thanked the family and assured them that they would get to the bottom of the mystery. As they began their investigation, they discovered that the mansion had a long and troubled history. It was built by the McAllister ancestors in the early 19th century and had served as a base for numerous historical events, including a bloody Civil War battle that took place in the surrounding woods. The first order of business was to interview the servants, who were more than willing to share their experiences with the supernatural. They told them of doors slamming shut on their own, cold spots in rooms where there was no draft, and objects moving or disappearing without any explanation. Some of them even claimed to have seen the ghostly figure of a woman roaming the halls late at night. Mark and Sarah took careful notes, not wanting to miss any detail that could prove crucial to their investigation. Next, they decided to explore the extensive library, hoping to find any clues about the mansion's history that might shed light on the haunting. The library was a maze of dusty shelves and ancient tomes, filled with the musty smell of age and neglect. After hours of poring over old documents and journals, they discovered that the McAllister family had a long history of mental illness, with several generations of insane relatives being hidden away in the attic. They also found a diary belonging to one of the McAllister daughters, who had apparently gone insane and committed suicide after witnessing something terrible in the woods during the Civil War. As they continued their investigation, they began to uncover more and more disturbing secrets about the McAllister family. They learned that the current head of the family, Mr. McAllister, had a troubled past himself, having served time in a mental institution after attempting to murder his first wife. The servants whispered that he had been acting strangely ever since he was released, and that he was often seen wandering the halls of the mansion at night, muttering to himself. One evening, while Mark and Sarah were sitting in the drawing room, they heard a strange noise coming from the attic. Deciding to investigate, they crept up the creaky stairs and into the musty, dusty room. The attic was filled with old furniture and boxes, and it was obvious that it hadn't been cleaned in years. As they explored further, they discovered a hidden door behind a tapestry, leading to a small, cramped chamber. Inside, they found a collection of old medical equipment and restraints, indicating that it had been used as a makeshift asylum in the past. As they examined the room, they felt a chill run down their spines. They could sense that something wasn't right, that there was an oppressive presence in the air. Suddenly, they heard a faint whispering coming from the corner of the room. As they investigated further, they found an old diary hidden beneath a pile of dusty blankets. The diary belonged to Mr. McAllister's first wife, who had been committed to the asylum after trying to escape from her husband's abuse. In the diary, she described horrific experiments that were being conducted on her and the other inmates, experiments that had driven her insane. The revelation sent shockwaves through Mark and Sarah. It was clear that the haunting was not the result of a simple ghost story, but rather the traumatized spirits of the victims of the McAllister family's twisted past. They quickly made their way back downstairs and confronted Mr. McAllister, revealing their discoveries. At first, he denied everything, but as they showed him the evidence, his demeanor began to change. He broke down in tears, confessing to his crimes and begging for forgiveness. The McAllister family was forced to come to terms with their dark history, and Mr. McAllister was finally committed to a mental institution, where he could receive the help he so desperately needed. The haunting ceased almost immediately, and the servants and children were finally able to find peace once more. Mark and Sarah, meanwhile, left the mansion with a newfound respect for the power of the past and the importance of confronting the demons of our own making. As Detective Mark Hayes and journalist Sarah pull up to the dilapidated mansion, they exchange knowing glances. The air is thick with an eerie silence, only interrupted by the rustling of leaves and the distant howl of a wolf. The once grand estate now stands as a testament to the family's fall from grace. Its once manicured gardens overgrown with weeds, the paint peeling from its walls, and the windows boarded up. They approach the massive oak door, knocking 3 times in unison. A shrill, ghostly laughter echoes through the halls, sending shivers down their spines. The current owners, an elderly couple, nervously answer the door, inviting them in. As they step inside, Mark and Sarah are immediately assailed by the musty scent of damp wood and the faintest whiff of something else, despair, perhaps. The owners lead them through the darkened hallways, pointing out areas where objects mysteriously move on their own accord or where strange whispers can be heard late at night. They explain that they've tried to contact a paranormal investigation team, but none have been willing to take on the case. Desperate for answers, they've turned to Mark and Sarah, hoping that their unique backgrounds in crime-solving and journalism might shed some light on the situation. The further they venture into the mansion, the more Mark and Sarah begin to sense the presence of something unsettling. Doors slam shut on their own, cold spots chill the air around them, and they catch glimpses of fleeting shadows darting across the walls. Finally, they reach the library, where the owners insist that the activity is at its worst. The room is shrouded in darkness, save for the flickering light of a single candle. Bookshelves stretch up to the ceiling, their leather-bound volumes dusty and untouched. In the center of the room stands a large, ornate table, its surface covered in various items belonging to the family. A silver pocket watch, a faded photograph, and a set of intricately carved ivory chopsticks. Mark and Sarah exchange glances, sensing that this is where they need to begin their investigation. After ensuring that they have all the necessary equipment, they set up the seance in the corner of the room. Mark clears his throat, trying to dispel the tension that fills the air. He lights a sage stick, waving the smoke around the room, cleansing it of any negative energy. Once he feels that the space is purified, he takes his place at the table, inviting Sarah to join him. They both place their hands on the table, feeling the cold, clammy touch of the table's surface. Mark closes his eyes, focusing on his breath, trying to calm his racing heart. He concentrates, reaching out to the other side, hoping to make contact with the spirits of the mansion. After what feels like an eternity, he feels a sudden chill run down his spine. "Is there anyone here with us?" he asks, his voice barely audible. There is a long silence, and then a soft, feminine voice answers, "Yes, my name is Abigail." Mark and Sarah exchange shocked glances. Abigail was the name of the family's matriarch, who had died under mysterious circumstances many years ago. The detective takes a deep breath, steadying himself before asking another question. "Abigail, what do you want us to know?" The room falls silent once more, but this time, there is a sense of urgency in the air. When the voice finally comes, it is strained and filled with pain. I want you to know the truth. About what happened here, about my family." Mark and Sarah exchange glances again, feeling a chill run down their spines. They know that they are on the brink of uncovering a dark secret, one that has been hidden for far too long. As they continue to question Abigail, the story begins to unfold before them, painting a picture of a family consumed by greed and power, a family whose actions have left an indelible stain on the very fabric of reality. The hours seem to pass in the blink of an eye, as Mark and Sarah listen intently to the tragic tale that Abigail reveals. They learn of the family's involvement in a string of unspeakable crimes, of their brutal murders at the hands of an unknown assailant, and of the dark forces that have been unleashed as a result. As the last words of Abigail's story echo through the library, they both know that their lives will never be the same. With a heavy heart, Mark and Sarah thank Abigail for her courage in speaking to them and promise to bring her peace, even if it means unraveling the tangled web of lies and deception that has held the family captive for so long. As they stand to leave the mansion, they can't help but feel a sense of dread settling over them, knowing that the road ahead will be fraught with danger, and that the truth they seek may be more terrifying than anything they could have imagined. The grandfather clock in the study struck midnight, its eerie chimes echoing through the halls of the mansion. Detective Mark Hayes and journalist Sarah exchanged uneasy glances as they stood in the dimly lit room, surrounded by the various artifacts and antiques that adorned the walls. They had been working tirelessly for weeks, investigating the strange occurrences reported by the mansion's current owners. Now, they had finally uncovered the truth. The mansion was haunted by the restless spirits of the family's victims. To put an end to the haunting, they had decided to conduct a seance, hoping to make contact with the spirits and help them find peace. The room was lit by flickering candles, casting dancing shadows on the walls as they waited for the spirits to materialize. The air was thick with anticipation and fear, as if the very foundations of the mansion were shuddering under the weight of the unspoken secrets that lay buried within its walls. As they sat down at the circular table, their hands clasped together in a desperate attempt to remain calm, Mark and Sarah could feel the presence of the spirits growing stronger. The room seemed to tremble slightly, and a chill ran down their spines. They could sense that the spirits were close, waiting for them to make contact. "Are you ready?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of their own hearts pounding in their ears. Mark nodded, taking a deep breath as he focused his thoughts on the task at hand. He closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind, searching for the connection that would allow them to speak with the spirits. There was a long moment of silence, broken only by the faint rustling of the curtains at the window. Then, Mark felt a sudden chill race up his spine, as if someone had walked over his grave. He opened his eyes, gazing around the room with a mixture of awe and fear. Before them stood the spirits of the mansion's victims, their translucent forms barely visible in the flickering candlelight. They were all looking at him and Sarah, their expressions a mix of relief and desperation. "We've been waiting for you," one of the spirits whispered, its voice little more than a whisper on the wind. "We need your help." Mark nodded, taking the spirit's hand in his own. "We're here to help you find peace," he said gently. "Tell us what's keeping you trapped here." The spirits glanced around the room, their eyes filling with sadness and anger. "It is our tormentor," one of them said, pointing to a darkened corner of the room. There, standing amidst shadows, was the spirit of the mansion's former owner, the patriarch of the family, who had committed the heinous crimes that had led to their demise. Even in death, his presence was palpable, his icy gaze boring into Mark and Sarah like twin daggers. "He does not want us to find peace," another spirit chimed in, her voice barely audible above the sound of their labored breathing. "He thinks he can keep us trapped here forever." Mark and Sarah exchanged a knowing glance. They had suspected as much. The patriarch's spirit was using his influence from beyond the grave to maintain his control over the mansion and the spirits within it. They would have to confront him directly if they were to set the spirits free. Taking a deep breath, Mark stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "We're not afraid of you," he growled, his voice echoing through the room. "We're here to help these spirits find the peace they deserve." The patriarch's spirit laughed, a mocking bellow that sent shivers down Mark and Sarah's spines. "You foolish mortals," he sneered. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Despite the coldness in his voice, Mark refused to back down. "We may be mortal," he said, "but we have courage and compassion, and we will not let you keep these spirits trapped here any longer." The patriarch's spirit narrowed his eyes, studying Mark's defiant expression. For a moment, it seemed as though he were considering the detective's words. Then, with a sigh that seemed to rustle the curtains at the window, he turned away. "Very well," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you truly mean to help them, then I will grant you your wish." The spirits of the mansion's victims let out a collective gasp of relief, their translucent forms beginning to glow brighter. Mark and Sarah exchanged another glance, their hearts filled with hope. As the patriarch's spirit faded into the shadows, the other spirits reached out to them, their pale fingers trembling with gratitude. "Thank you," they whispered in unison. "Thank you for giving us the peace we've been denied for so long." Mark and Sarah nodded, their eyes filling with tears as they watched the spirits fade away, one by one, until at last the room was empty save for the two of them. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed once more, its melancholy tones echoing through the now silent mansion. With the spirits finally at peace, they turned to leave, their steps heavier than before. As they made their way down the hall, they couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment, of having done something truly meaningful. They knew that their work was far from over, but for now, they could rest easy knowing that they had given the spirits of the mansion a chance to find the peace they deserved. The aftermath of their successful investigation at the haunted mansion is nothing short of triumphant for Detective Mark Hayes and journalist Sarah. News outlets from across the country are vying for their story, praising them for their unconventional methods and unwavering determination to uncover the truth behind the supernatural occurrences. As the duo basks in the glow of their newfound fame, they receive a peculiar letter addressed to them at the newspaper's offices. The letter, penned in a shaky, old-fashioned handwriting, invites them to a small town nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains. The writer claims that the town has been suffering from a series of strange occurrences that defy rational explanation, and pleads for their help in uncovering the truth. Intrigued and eager to continue their work together, Mark and Sarah accept the invitation without hesitation. Upon arriving in the town, they are greeted by a peculiar sight. A group of townsfolk gathered around a large, ornate fountain in the center of the town square. As they approach, they notice that the townsfolk are all wearing peculiar masks, their faces obscured by carved wooden visages. The fountain itself is adorned with statues of animals and mythical creatures, each one seeming to writhe in agony. The town sheriff, a gruff but honest man named Tom, meets them at the edge of the crowd. He leads them to his office, where they discuss the recent events in greater detail. The townsfolk have been reporting sightings of strange creatures prowling the woods at night, and objects disappearing from their homes without a trace. The sheriff is skeptical, but he's also desperate for answers. As Mark and Sarah begin their investigation, they quickly realize that the town's dark past is intertwined with the fountain in the town square. According to local legend, the fountain was built by a wealthy industrialist who made his fortune exploiting the town's natural resources. In an attempt to atone for his sins, he carved the statues of the animals and creatures that had suffered under his rule. However, it seems that his efforts have had the opposite effect. The fountain has become a focal point for the town's dark energy, attracting malevolent spirits and otherworldly forces. Mark and Sarah decide to conduct a ritual around the fountain, hoping to purge it of the negative energy that has been attracting the supernatural entities. They gather the townsfolk in a circle around the fountain, and Sarah begins to chant an ancient incantation, her voice carrying across the night air. As she speaks, the air around them crackles with energy, and the statues on the fountain seem to glow with an unearthly light. Suddenly, a figure emerges from the shadows, the ghost of the industrialist himself. He confesses his sins to the townsfolk, begging for their forgiveness. The townsfolk, moved by his plea, remove their masks and reveal their faces, their anger and bitterness replaced by a sense of understanding and compassion. The energy emanating from the fountain dissipates, and the town finally finds peace. In the aftermath of their successful ritual, Mark and Sarah are hailed as heroes once again. They decide to continue their partnership, traveling the country and investigating other mysterious occurrences, always ready to uncover the truth behind the supernatural. Their work becomes the stuff of legend, and they become known as the duo who can solve any mystery, no matter how strange or inexplicable it may seem. Together, they embark on a journey that takes them to the farthest corners of the world, uncovering secrets and revealing the hidden truths that lie at the heart of human experience. Thank you so much for joining me on this cinematic journey. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Have you experienced a spine-chilling horror that left you trembling? Share your terrifying tale with us by emailing nightmarenetwork@hotmail.com, and we'd be thrilled to feature it on our platform. Until next time, happy movie watching.